Hey there, welcome to Board Game Hot Takes, the podcast where we give our immediate reactions to the hottest board games just minutes after playing them. My name's Tim.
And this is Chris.
This is Adam.
And today we're going to talk about the game we just finished playing, Granja. But before we do, I do have some poll results to talk about. Firstly, I have a poll about what game we should have played tonight. On that poll, I asked whether people would rather listen to a review about a game that's on Kickstarter right now, Granja. And then I asked about a game it's a game we've reviewed before, but it's got a hot new expansion that's just come out. And that was the Rise of Ix expansion for Dune Imperium.
And Tim, how did that poll come out? What were the results there? I feel like I don't know. Tell me.
They were interested in hearing about both of these games. So Granja got 34% of the vote. That's a significant amount of people that want to hear about Granja. Mm-hmm. The Rise of Ix got 56% of the vote. Which is a little higher. But what that told me...
And yet we went with Granja.
What that told me is that people wanted to hear about both of these games. But Granja, it's timely. By the time this episode comes out, there will still be a few days left in the Kickstarter. If we didn't do it this week, there never would have been a good chance to do it. So we did Granja tonight. Rise of Ix, we're going to do it next week if everything works out the way we hope it will. And then it will still be perfect because you know what? That's still pre-orders still haven't been delivered for the Rise of Ix at this point. So perfect timing probably because of the shipping issues and stuff.
So the will of the people who took the time to look at our Twitter page and go vote in this poll was basically ignored. Is that what happened?
No, it was definitely listened to and we'll
listened to and shoved into the corner. All right, that's cool.
Tim doesn't believe in the rule of the majority. He believes in the rule of the significant minority.
Here's the deal, right? I mean, democracy is a great concept, but that most people don't deserve to have their voices heard. So let's just move on to the next poll that I'm going to talk about here. So I just asked a more fun poll about which of these sci-fi IP-based games best represented their theme mechanically. And I said, though it's not my favorite, well, you know what? I'm going to hold my thoughts. So here are the options I gave. Number 1 was Star Wars Rebellion. Number 2, Dune Imperium. Number 3, Battlestar Galactica. And number 4, The Expanse board game. And what got me thinking about this is that I've been talking about it lately, but I'm reading the Expanse novels. I'm almost done with the third novel. I can't wait to get into the show. Thinking about that board game and what other great sci-fi board games there are. So that was the options I gave. Did you guys vote on this?
Well, I actually didn't vote on it. I've been getting a little bit of social media burnout these last couple of weeks, and so I hadn't really been paying that close attention, which I probably should. But I can tell you my answer, even though I didn't actually answer the poll, and that is Star Wars Rebellion. Of course. I love the Expanse television show. I really liked the game. But, honestly, I really didn't feel like there was that much thematic tie-in between the two. But Star Wars Rebellion... Every time I've played that, I felt like I was watching the movie, like I was in the movie, and it's amazing. It's amazing how well that game brings the story into the game. So, Adam, what about you?
I totally agree, Chris. Star Wars Rebellion is my choice. All those games are great, and I love them fantastically. But Star Wars Rebellion, how great is it? You can have Chewbacca out there, and he can get lured in by the dark side. He can get captured, and then he can get converted to the dark side. Now all of a sudden, Chewbacca is part of the dark side, taking actions to help the Empire. It's so great. And you got a Death Star out there. You can move that around, obliterate planets. You can chop up Yoda's planet before Luke can go there and become a Jedi. It's all this great stuff can happen. So yeah, the theme is there, and you can kind of tweak it to have all these fun scenarios. If you're a Star Wars fan, I think it's fantastic. Tim, are you going to say Battlestar Galactica or what?
Let me ask you guys, have you actually played Battlestar Galactica? Have either of you played Battlestar Galactica?
Yes, indeed.
You have, Adam. Okay, were you a fan of the show?
Much like the game, the first few moments of the show are fantastic, and then the game just kind of drags on, just like the show drags on way too long. And oh my gosh, by the end of it, you're just like, why didn't I quit doing this 3 hours ago?
Well, I'll take number 6 home with me, and you can have Star Wars. But here's the deal, right? Star Wars Rebellion thematically is great, and if it weren't for Battlestar Galactica, even though it's my least favorite of these 4 games, and it's a great game, my least favorite of the 4 though, but thematically it does work really well. But I said Battlestar Galactica because to me, Battlestar Galactica is so good, man. It captures the moments of not knowing who is the traitor. You don't even know whether you're the traitor until halfway through the game. And that's exactly what the Cylons were like. It was so good. Now, I played this game like 12 years ago when it was first out, and I wasn't big into board games at the time, but I got a big group of people together that weren't into board games. We spent like 6 or 7 hours going through the rules and figuring this game out and playing it, and we all had a blast, and it was so much fun, and I just have so many great memories from it. So I had to say Battlestar Galactica. Thematically, I just remember being a big fan of the show at the time, and the game just fit right in. Do I want to play it again? Probably not. It's probably clunky. It's probably Fantasy Flight, fiddly, like nonsense rules you got to reference like 58 times, just like Star Wars Rebellion. But from a theme perspective, I remember having a really fun time with it.
Did you say 7 hours?
Something like that. I mean, we spent a lot of time. It was like 8 people got together that were not gamers and read through the rule book and figured this game out and played it. So yeah, it took a long time.
It's like a 7-hour hidden trader game. I feel like there's so many games that capture that same thing in about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, but not as good as Battlestar Galactica does.
What year did that game come out, Tim? You said like 12 years ago, so we're talking... What?
Yeah, it was a while ago. I feel like it was probably like 2009, 2008, 2009 or something like that was when we played it. So okay. It's been a while.
I'm just trying to think where that sort of fits in the overall timeline of hobby gaming.
Yeah, it was, fairly early. Like there was a lot of stuff that was, we're past Puerto Rico by a long shot. Right? We're past pandemic, not too far, but games were picking up. Mm-hmm. But I think I think it was kind of a head start. Then the thing is that like Fantasy Flight lost the license to Battlestar Galactica and never renewed it. So they actually just released a new version of this game called Unfathomable, and it's set in the Cthulhu mythos. And it uses a lot of the same mechanisms where you don't know whether you're a traitor, you're a cultist in this case, or whether somebody else is a cultist and they're trying to sabotage the ship. It seems like a pretty good readaptation, and I think they streamlined it a little bit. So semi-interested in trying that at some point, but just because I know it's a long Fantasy Flight fiddly game, not that interested, but it was fun for its time for sure.
So Chris, that one was released in 2008. I think that's what you guys ended up on, but yeah, I don't know what you said. Puerto Rico was out by then, and some of the early kind of classics.
Yeah. There definitely some games. Carcassonne was probably big at the time, and so.
Yeah, you're right. I would say it's kind of a bigger one that was ahead of its time a little bit.
All right, cool. So here's what other people said. So Star Wars Rebellion got 33% of the vote. So, you guys are not too far off there. Dune Imperium at a good 19%. I thought just because how popular it is right now and the theme is right now, I figured it'd get a few votes. But come on, thematically, not really, it's a great game mechanically. Thematically, it's okay. Battlestar Galactica, 44%. I was right as always on that one. And then the Expanse board game, just probably because nobody's played it, 4%. I do think it felt thematic. I mean, that cardboard stand-up that said proto-molecule on it, how could he pass the theme on that one?
Yeah, seriously, all those screen captures they did, how could that not remind you of the show?
All right, cool. Well, that will wrap up for the poll results. Let's jump into a description of La Granja.
La Granja, which translates roughly to The Farm, is a game that can only be played properly if you use a real Spanish accent, which I don't have, so you're stuck with La Granja. In any event, 1 to 4 players seek their fortune running agricultural estates on the island of Majorca. The game plays out over a series of 6 rounds in which players will build up their farms, represented by individual player boards, produce and harvest various products, and take them to market, represented by a central market board. A central feature of this game is the clever and creative improvement cards that players will use to build up their estates. I say clever because each card has not 1, not 2, not 3, but count them, 4 different potential ways a player can use the card. One side adds fields where players can plant and harvest. One side contains a wheelbarrow that can be used to bring goods to market. One side contains improvements to the farm infrastructure, including pens to hold animals for later sale. And finally, one side contains workers that provide players with an ongoing benefit of some kind. I'm calling these out because, with 4 options, you're going to spend a lot of time looking at these cards and weighing these options. Each round starts with the farm phase, in which players draw and play the improvement cards we were just talking about. Gain income, work their fields, and put roof tiles on their houses. This last part may sound a little weird, but these are special magic roof tiles that come with benefits. Other than keeping the rain off your head, you just have to trust me on this one. Next comes the revenue phase, in which players will roll several dice to create a shared pool. In order, players will select dice that correspond to specific actions and benefits such as drawing and playing extra cards, raising pigs, drawing extra income, and so forth. After revenue, players begin the transportation phase, in which they'll bring goods to town, setting up market stalls to sell their wares. This takes place on the central market board and also includes a really interesting element of area control. This is also where players will move their markers along the oddly named siesta track, which will affect player order and potentially set players up for additional victory points, if they're particularly well rested. Finally, players return markers and helpers from the board and score up their end of round points. After 6 rounds, players will conduct the final tally, and the player with the most victory points wins. There's a lot more to this game than I have time to describe here, but this should give you a rough sense of the game's mechanisms and flow. Also, I should mention that there's currently a live Kickstarter campaign for the, quote, Deluxe Master Set that ends in mid-February. This will contain some new rules, modules, and expansion content, but for today, we're talking about the classic version. Granja was designed by Michael Keller and Andreas Odenhall and was originally published by Spielworks Games.
All right, thanks. Let's jump into the gameplay and mechanisms of Granja. Now, we've all played this once on Board Game Arena with the classic look and feel, with the classic rules of the game. So, Adam, why don't we start here with you? Anything that stands out for you for mechanisms?
Yeah, first overall, I want to say what a unique set of mechanisms that blends in such a crazy kind of way. The first thing I want to talk about, because this is what's kind of happens chronologically, is the cards in front of you. Each player has 4 cards per round. You're looking at all these choices. Chris nailed it. In the rules description, they can be used in 4 different ways. That's 16 choices right there if you want to spend time and count them out. The first decision of the game is which 2 cards are you going to play? Are you going to use them as helpers? Are you going to use them as kind of engine builders? Are you going to use them as wheelbarrows? Man, what choices from this set of cards right off the bat. Chris, what do you think about that?
I think that is the story of this game. I mean, those cards with their 4 different options, I racked my brain so many times trying to figure out what to do with those cards. And every time I did, I loved the choices that I was making. They were hard choices, but they were so much fun. I absolutely thought that was a blast. But I'm guessing Tim is going to have something to say about that, because I know that's kind of right up your alley.
Well, I don't think it's the story of the game. I actually think this game has a lot of stories that are more important than the multi-use cards, but I think the multi-use cards are great. And my favorite part of the multi-use cards is that automatically at the beginning of each of the 6 rounds, you're going to get to play one for free. And I think that's important here because it is a tough choice. It's an important choice, but you don't have to work too hard to actually build up your farm and advance and build your engine here. It just is going to happen automatically. You get some great choices to make, but you get to do it. There's other opportunities to do it even further, and that's cool, but it's really cool that everybody gets to make 2 choices that makes their farm asymmetric at the beginning of the game, and over the course of the game, you get to keep building it out and growing it and changing it. And I love it. But the choices are really fun. The multi-use cards are fun. The player powers, the worker, what are they called? Workers or whatever it is.
Helpers.
The helpers that, if you use it as a helper, those just feel like such game-breaking abilities. But even though you've got these game-breaking abilities, you still have to give up all the other things like being able to produce goods or being able to, grow your income or be able to, actually sell some of these goods. Like those are the things you're giving up if you get one of these game-breaking abilities. And so it's so funny that those things feeling so strong, you still don't use them most of the time because all the other things are so important to the game. So really great choice right from the first second of the game. So I think that the root of this game, I think that the main part of this game is this very unique area control mechanism here. So basically what happens is that as you are, starting up your farm, there's a time when you get to send goods out. You get these little donkey icons that can happen a few different ways during the course of the round. And you're going to send goods into a wheelbarrow, which is one of the potential cards you can build. And then you're going to send them out to the central marketplace. And if you can fill up this wheelbarrow, kind of like filling an order, then you can place a token out on a related number on the board. If there's any other tokens of a lower number adjacent to the space you put, you kick theirs off, you get points for any that you kick off, and at the end of the round, you're going to get points for each of your tokens that are up there. So there's this like really interesting area control mechanisms where you have to work really hard to fill it and get your token out there. But when you do, you can get other people out of the way. Or if it's a low number, yours is going to get knocked right back off. Could be that same round. Maybe you get a point or 2 out of it and it gets knocked off. But if you can fill a tougher order, you can get a big number out there and it's going to stick around for a little while. wow, that was so cool. It was so hard to get out there, but so impactful when you could do it. What do you guys think of the area control here?
I agree. I thought that was really cool. And one thing that was interesting, you didn't necessarily always want to get the highest numbered wheelbarrow because you do get the opportunity to knock people off of their stalls, but it depends on where they're placed. So for example, in the last round, I would have loved to have had a number 5 stall because there's a number of places that I could have knocked you guys off of your spaces, but I had a 6. It's a higher number, but the only places that were still available for a 6 were places that I couldn't actually touch you. So it was a little bit of a tricky decision there for me to make. Ultimately, it wasn't that hard a decision because I didn't have a 5 available to me. But if I had, I would have had to think to myself, do I want to go with the higher number and make myself bulletproof? Or do I want to go with the lower number and potentially have more of an impact on the makeup of that area? So Adam, what did you think? You're a big area control guy, and I know you like player interaction, and this is a big place where you can do that in this game.
Yeah, this was just totally crazy. It's totally unique. I've never seen anything like this. I'm sure probably is out there, and someone would be like, oh, it's just this in different disguise. But it seems like you're putting this little character out there with the ability to, kind of, I know it's just like your market's outdoing theirs, but it seems like you're putting it out there and it's exploding all around it. And all these guys are getting wiped off this little map. It's just crazy to me. And I like that you can get little boosters to this whole area control war zone out there. For instance, I had a guy, when my little markets got bumped, I could put it on any adjacent open spot. So it's nice to have little modifiers on it too. It's just crazy. Doing the math on it, about a third to a half of the points roughly are coming out of this area control mechanic. So it is one of the hearts of this game, Tim. I'll concede that.
Is that Azul math?
Yeah. I was going there too. I think the other major heart of this game, and the other really fun, probably my second favorite part, was
I know what you're going to say.
The dice drafting.
Oh, yes!
Yeah. I forget it was called income. I don't know. It wasn't called income, but
Revenue.
Thank you.
Revenue
so
phase.
There's this phase of the game where dice get rolled 2 times the number of players plus 1. And then you take turns. Everybody drafts 2 different dice, and each of the dice 1 through 6 correspond with these different little bonuses that you're going to get out of it. And so after you finish drafting, then there's 1 more dice left over on one of those spots, and everybody gets that benefit. So you're basically getting 3 benefits. That was so fun. I mean, the benefits were important, and the economy of them changed every round. Sometimes you would have nothing available, but sometimes going first is really important because there would only be 1 dice of a certain type, and you're like, okay, well, there's only 1 of those. I got to grab that one. I need money, but there's 5 of those dice over there, so I don't care about that. I'll wait. That'll come back around to me. So it was really clever, just economy of what those actions were going to be. And I love a clever action selection system about like what kind of opportunities can you do? What can you do with your round? And this was a really clever way to do it, and it had some interaction. You could watch what other people needed and take it from them. You could watch what other people were going to need and say, I got to grab that first because I know they're going to need it, even though I do as well. So that was great too. Did you guys enjoy that?
For some reason, it was amazing. It seems so boring when you think about it. Like there's just some dice lined up next to a picture, but the order that you're picking them off there, and it's like you said, Tim, you get to it's another little tactic, a little assault you can do against your opponents. The last round, there was the delivery donkey. There was only 2 6s there, and of course, Steve and I snatched them up right away, so nobody else got that extra delivery. It was sweet, and it just seems like such a simple thing. It's so cool. What'd you think, Chris?
After I said before that the story of this game was, what did I say it was? The story of the game?
The multi-use cards.
Yeah, the multi-use cards. This is actually the real story of this game. I was wrong before. The real story of this game is the dice drafting. Because, man, I think the reason for that, every single one of those actions that was available to you during the dice draft was incredibly important. They were big. And all of them could be game changers. And so I think there was not a time that dice didn't start rolling, that we weren't all sitting on the edge of our chairs waiting to see what was going to come up, because there was something we were waiting for, something we were really hoping for, and you just wanted to see if the dice were going to come up and provide that opportunity. And then even if they did, was somebody else going to snatch that dice up from underneath you? The tension level, like my heart was thumping when we were going through that round, and I thought that was amazing.
And just that little low-hanging fruit at the end, that the one dice that doesn't get picked is going to be a benefit for everybody. And as the last player making the choice, you get to choose what's everybody going to get or what's everybody not going to get. That's such a tasty little decision that they threw in there. I thought it was great.
And speaking of last player, Last week we talked in the Brass review about the first player choice, and it was an interesting choice, but a complicated and, sometimes frustrating, like you got to deal with all this management of the money and all that stuff. This one has a great first player selection token. Essentially, there's this siesta track. And if you get enough siestas in your round, you're going to get some extra points at the end of the round, but you're also going to get to go first. Whoever is the highest in the siesta track gets to go first next round. And generally how that happens is that there's this kind of blind bidding phase where everybody turns over one of their 4 markers, and you're either going to get X number of deliveries you can make or siestas you can make. You don't know what everyone else is going to take, but whoever ends up the highest in the siesta track gets to go first next round. So do you want to push more deliveries, or do you want to get the chance to go first next round? And then there's a couple other ways you can get siesta markers as well. So what a clever, simple mechanism to track. You get a couple moves up that track during the course of the round. After that time, it was so fun. Like one time I was like, okay, I'm first this round. I know I'm not going to go first next round. So I'm just going to do all the deliveries, put all 4 of my donkeys over. I turn it over. Everybody does the same. And since I'm on the top of the marker, I still get to go first next round, even though I thought for sure I wasn't going to get to do it. Such a surprise and such a fun way to decide first player, because you have to give up, what the most important thing of the game, which is delivering goods out to the market or delivering goods to some of those edge markets that you could sell to. Just another really fantastic mechanism that was put into this big old mechanism pie that just seemed to work really well.
Another mechanism, Tim, you touched on it here, was that delivery thing and the choice of where to deliver those goods. You had your little wheelbarrow cards. Did you want to deliver them there? Did you want to deliver them to the bank and get 3 income per round if you fill that order? Did you want to deliver them to the little bacon shop and get whatever that gives you, some other ongoing bonus? So you have this choice every time of where you're going to deliver these goods, and are you going to get enough deliveries? Oh my gosh, how am I going to get more deliveries? How's this going to happen? I need to maximize all these things so I can score these and get points. So that whole delivery thing is just so tense the whole, every round.
One other thing that I want to bring up in mechanisms, the anytime actions. Those were something that they're not real sexy. I mean, it is not an exciting thing to have an anytime action, but they're all over the place in this game. They end up being really meaningful. And let me go back for a second and talk generally about what this means. There's some games that we've talked about, like Sulkin, for example, where it's incredibly simple decisions. It's either you drop a guy or you pick a guy up. And then there's things that flow from that. And then there's other games like this game and Gaia Project, for example, where there's always this menu of stuff. There's like this smorgasbord of actions that you can take, and it's putting together just the right combinations of all these different variations. There's 15, 20 different things that you could do in any turn, and it's getting them just right. And this, with the free actions, like, for example, using money, using your silver to buy a resource, or to upgrade a resource, or to do a number of other things, you are constantly getting the opportunity to do things that may improve your position in one way or another, in some little nudgy kind of way. You never quite know what's going to happen next. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Gaia Project, because it made me feel like what I like about Gaia Project, that it does feel like there's always one more opportunity to do one little thing that's going to get you the last resource you need to be able to pull off your turn and make it all come together. And this game pulls it off. Like one time I spent $4 as an anytime action to buy a grape. And that's a terrible use of your money in this game when you can get grapes for free sometimes. But I needed at that point, it's cool. I got to do what I needed to do for the turn. So you always have these little options to do that. That said, I think there's one big flaw with this game, just one, and literally only one complaint I have about it. And that is the sequence of the turn is like 15 different steps with 4 different sub-steps, right? And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there's a very specific sequence that everything happens in this round. And the problem with it is, like any game like this, is that somebody's got to be tracking that. Okay, first we have to start with this phase. Everybody play a card and then drop your cards. And then everybody, what's the next phase? Everyone take your income. Okay, and then everybody harvest your goods. And then everybody do this. And that's just going to go on. And it's 6 rounds. Comparing it to Gaia Project, where basically everybody has like 5 basic actions they can take, or they can take these anytime actions. In this game, you can take anytime actions, but a lot of the stuff you're doing has to happen in a very specific order, and it's just a lot of overhead to track. Somebody's got to be paying attention and basically being the accountant in this game and making sure that everything's happening in a specific order. And, we talked about in Merchants of the Dark Road, right? Like, okay, first I got to do action 1 and then subsection 2 and then subsection 3. it's happening here. But the game is so freaking amazing. Like everything else that you're doing is so fun. The way the turn all comes together, I can overlook it here. But it's a big, I think it's a big fault with the game.
To contrast that with a game that I think that does that right, I want to look at Smartphone Inc. The way it does the phases. You're going to do this and this phase and this, and it's so clean. The phases just cruise right by. It's so smooth and there's no confusion, no delay. The way it does it is just a nice contrast, a nice smooth contrast to the way we see it here in this game.
Yeah, and we played on Board Game Arena, which was nice. It guided us through it, and even that was a little bit confusing. But I can imagine playing. Okay, so Orleans is another example of a game that has like a 5-turn round with it, and it's pretty simple. And I've played the game like 25 times, but I still have to reference the little player card every time that kind of walks you through the round. But I'm the one that's doing it, right? I'm the one that's teaching the game and kind of making sure, okay, guys, don't forget, we got to make sure that the farmers get paid here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure that if I was playing this game, I don't get to focus on my strategy because I got to make sure that everybody's followed this step of the phase and then followed this step. And I think that that's a pretty big flaw in, the approachability of the game and teaching the game, but also just running the game and making sure that somebody didn't miss a step and making sure that everybody's doing everything they need to do. So this was my first play of the game, but thinking about how it would be to play this game and teach it to other people and to run a game of it, that seems like a lot of work to do. And that is probably my biggest concern about the game overall.
I totally agree with you, Tim. Going through the phase order here, you nailed it. Adds a lot of time. How are you going to teach that? It's not super easy flow. So yeah, that was a bit rough even on an online platform where it guides you through.
All right, let's talk about the theme and production on this game. Now, we played the classic version of La Granja that's available on Board Game Arena today. Chris mentioned it in the rules description. There is a La Granja Master Deluxe Edition that's out on Kickstarter right now. I don't want you to go and back something on Kickstarter. I don't want you to go and put your money down for something that's going to come in like 2 years and you may or may not get it, and maybe there's misprints in the rulebook. All that stuff could happen, but holy cow, does the production for that new version look amazing. Okay, first let me say that we're sitting here playing the game and saying like this is one of the most boring productions we've ever seen, right? Playing the classic version, the classic one. And we're looking at it and saying like, this looks like the guy that did the art for the classic Castles of Burgundy, which is known as one of the ugliest games ever made. So I look up the artist. It is the exact same artist. I don't know who gave this guy a second job after that, but it is a pretty boring and ugly production. Also, the name of the game is La Granja. And I've heard that this was a good game before, but I had zero interest in actually looking into it because it's the most boring name of a game. This game is really, really fantastic, but they failed massively choosing the theme here, the implementation of the production, other than that really cool individual player boards that have all these slots for the different stuff you can do with it, which was expanded on in the new version and improved on. But yeah, just a big fail from a theme and production perspective in the classic version. What do you guys think?
All I can say is who greenlighted this thing? Who came up with, I mean, seriously, this game with all these brilliant mechanisms, so much fun to play and so unpleasant to look at. Could you come up with a more boring theme? Could you come up with a more boring production? I won't tip my hat as to what my final thoughts are on it. I probably have already. This is a game that just deserves way better than what it got in terms of its production. And one thing that you alluded to, Tim, with the player boards, in the Kickstarter version that's coming out now, the deluxe edition, they have these slotted boards where you actually get to slide the card into the board and keep them in place. This would drive me a little bit crazy if we were playing it in real life, having to slide these cards underneath just a plain old player board and then keep them there and then not bump them with my elbow and knock them around. And so I feel like we actually had a better experience playing it on Board Game Arena than we may have had playing it in real life. I think that's a shame.
Chris, when you said who greenlit this thing, I thought you were talking about because this thing is in 50 shades of green. This thing is totally inappropriate. Who did let this thing happen? It's, there's other colors out. Maybe they were out of paint in the printer and they only had green and white, so they had to go with that. It's shameful what they've done here for such an amazing game. Like, why not just add some color, make it about something other than coins and pigs and farming? Come on. Like, there's so many other things out there. Yeah, it's just frustrating.
Yeah, it is on Kickstarter right now with this deluxe and updated production, and they didn't change the theme, but they did improve drastically on the production. The look of this game is so much nicer. It's pretty, it's colorful. It's a game that I would be happy to look at. The market in the middle looks more interesting. The layouts on the player boards, where the sections of the different resources, the graphic design makes it more clear what you're doing there, where you're placing stuff. This is like a triple layered board where you have open slots that you can slide stuff underneath. You've got slots that you can put stuff on top of. It looks like they're really giving this game justice, even though they're not going to change the theme and update it from that perspective. They are improving the production and giving this game the production it deserves. I think it's worth looking at. That all being said, I'm not a fan of crowdfunding games and backing something on Kickstarter. If you are, check this game out. Don't skip on it just because you don't have any interest in looking at a game that's called Granja, because I didn't either. It's worth it, and go check this out. I'm gonna wait for retail, but I think it looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like I've got to give this game a little bit of a break thematically, because it's old enough, or at least the original version is old enough now, that at the time there weren't 6,000 other games out there that involved selling pigs and wheat in pre-industrial Europe.
Fair enough.
I will say this too. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. We talked about in the middle of the game, we're talking about this kind of classic era of board games and the pieces they come with. This is that very classic sense with you got your wooden octagon tokens, a la Power Grid, and you've got your just wooden discs. So it has that appeal to it, which I'm going to say is a classic sense.
It definitely feels very of its time. The original version of it, and it does feel a little bit more updated. The new version, they've got some nice new components there. All right, let's move on. So favorite moments of the game. Adam, any moments that stood out to you in this game?
I think around the third or fourth round, somewhere in there, Tim, is when the pieces started to come together for me with this game. At least a little bit, at least enough to like make something cool happen. So once that all kind of clicked, and seeing how delivering goods interacted with the area control portion, and then being able to bump these markers and how it all kind of tied together, getting that bonus crate. I had a few of those where I think the moment was this. I think it was the sixth round, the final round there, I was able to do 2 of those cards in 1 round. I'm sure everybody else was doing that all game. But I was able to ship these goods to my little wheelbarrow card, I think it's called, and then get my token on the market, get a bonus crate, and do that whole cycle, that whole process all over again, and get another little token out there. So it felt good to link those combos together, the double up. You get this good feeling from this wacky area control and meeting that goal, putting all these things together and making it happen. So that was the moment for me. What about you, Tim?
Yeah, for me, it was just, I played my first couple of cards at the beginning of the game, not really know what I was doing. I gave one of my cards, my worker card or helper, basically let me do an extra delivery for free and get a coin out of it. And then I played a field out there. And so, okay, tried those things out. And then I got my wheat, grew on my field. And then we got to the delivery round, and somehow past the dice drafting round and everything like that, I had 2 things out on one of those markets that needed 6 different things out there. It's time to do the delivery round, and I take the 4 donkey token because I had everything I needed to fill that first whole market, the whole 6 sections in the first round of the game, and I have no idea how I pulled it together. But wow, did it feel so good to just like fill that thing out, get that bonus immediately. Boom, got some points on the thing, got future points coming up every time I do one of those little trade sections of the board. Yeah, it was so cool to see this game come together, and so fun to see all the different asymmetric helpers that people had and the player powers that they had, which was a blast. It had so many great moments for me. So many like downers. Chris took that spot on the area control section out in the central marketplace, or Adam just knocked me off there. But so many amazing moments where I just managed to pull the things together I needed to. I took one of those anytime actions to buy grapes for $4 at the moment right when I need to do something else. What a cool game. So many great mechanisms working together here in a bunch of different ways. Fantastic. Had a lot of great moments here. Chris, what about you? Any moments that stood out to you?
I think the big moments of this game, every time we rolled those dice for the revenue phase, every round you have 50 things you want to get done, and you have these big plans, and you're going to live or die by where those dice land. And we're all sitting on the edge of our seats. My eyeballs sliding up and down the market board going, okay, it's a 6. Wait, what does a 6 get me? What can a 4 do? How many are those? Is Adam going to grab that up before I get it, or is Tim going to steal it? The tension level there and the excitement was so big. Like I said, my pulse was, throbbing. My heart was thumping every time those dice rolled. And that to me is like gaming at its absolute best.
Right on. All right. Well, let's give our final thoughts and answer the question, would you request to play it again? Let me start here. I loved this game. I can't wait to play it again. Probably one of the best gaming. I mean, I can't even believe how amazing this game was, and I really hadn't heard much about it before. Other than that, I've heard a couple of comments that it was a solid game, but it's so good and it needs more attention. And I'm glad it's getting this deluxe Kickstarter version that's going to get it out into some more hands, and hopefully I get a chance to play it again in the future. But the game's amazing. I will be requesting to play it again. Who am I going to play it with? It's not a great game to play async on BGA because there's so many opportunities to just click, I want a bonus action, I want a bonus action, right? So probably not going to be doing that. But I think that another game night, 4 of us getting together, we don't have a new game we have to play. This might be one of my first picks because it went pretty quickly once we all get the hang of it. A lot of fun interactions. You all know how I feel about Kickstarter. And I said, I'm not going to back anything on crowdfunding this year, especially on Kickstarter. Holy cow, am I tempted to back this game. I'm not going to. But it's an amazing game. And if you are tempted and you're not concerned about backing something on crowdfunding, you don't mind waiting for 2 years to get a game that you just paid for and hope that you get it someday, go back it. It's a great game if you've got somebody that you can play a heavy game with. My one other potential risk here is that I don't know who I'd play this with locally. My local group is kind of mid-weight, kind of lighter games that this is never going to go over with my local group. So if I bought it, probably going to play it solo a bit and it'll sit on my shelf until I can get 1 or 2 plays a year out of it. It might be worth it. I think when this comes to retail, I'll pick it up just because it's an amazing game. So that's how I feel about it. What about you, Chris?
This probably doesn't make great podcasting, but I agree with everything you just said. I couldn't say it better myself, and so I'm not going to try.
So I'm going to differ with you guys here a little bit to make this podcast a little bit interesting. This game is great. If I saw it up and people were ready to go, ready to play it, I would say, heck yeah, I know that game. Let's go play that game. I love that game. But Tim, you're bringing up some great points. When's this game going to get played? Is it going to go quickly? It's tough to get it done even on BGA because of all the little anytime actions you can do. When am I going to play this game over something, I mentioned it earlier, like Smartphone Inc.? It gives me a lot of the same feelings. I love the mechanism, the action selection in that game. You don't have these 4 choice cards. If that's too many choices for you, you can decide which technology you want to go for. Which side do you want to build to next? A lot of the same kind of choices in a much more streamlined package. So it's going to be tough for me to play this one over something like Smartphone Inc., but I had a great time with this game. What a surprise. This game was fantastic. So those are kind of my mixed thoughts here on La Granja.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with you, Adam. Like, I want to say, no, this is way better than Smartphone Inc., but Smartphone Inc. is so much more streamlined, so much more approachable, and easy to get to the table that I can't disagree that that's probably going to be a better experience most of the time and just be a more fun and easy to get into experience. So yeah, I'm kind of mixed on it too. This game's amazing. I would love to play it again anytime I could. I don't know when that's going to be, but fantastic game. All right, well, that will wrap up our conversation on La Granja. Chris has some La Granja themed cocktail to talk about, as well as we'll talk about some games that have been on our table lately right after this. All right, welcome back. So, Chris, what do you have for us this week?
Summertime in Spain. It's a gray winter where I am here in the American Northwest, but in La Granja, it is always a Mediterranean summer. So this week, I wanted to give you something to sip on that would transport you from wherever you are to a sunny porch overlooking your Majorca estate. Sounds like time for a nice cold glass of sangria, right? Well, the answer is no. Don't get me wrong, I love a good glass of sangria, headache and all. But in Majorca, folks refresh themselves on a hot summer day with a local concoction called the pomada, and it is truly sunshine in a glass. And the recipe couldn't be any easier. Here's all you'll need. 1 ounce of gin. There's actually a local specialty called, guarantee you I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but joriguer. And if you're lucky enough to get your hands on a bottle, go for it. That's the way to go. If not, just use what you have on hand. That's what I did. 3 ounces of lemonade. For this part, you do you. Use something bottled, make your own by mixing a little fresh lemon juice with simple syrup. Either way, you can't go wrong. Optional, a little soda water to make it fizzy. That's the way I like it, but you can do with or without. You add the ingredients to a highball glass filled with ice, stir it until it's cold, and that's it. For real. I don't want you overexerting yourself now. Plenty of work to be done on the farm. So enjoy this, put it together, knock it back, and then get back to work because it is time to get that wheelbarrow to market.
Chris, this drink was delicious, and I do think I mixed it up a little bit because I think I had about 3 ounces of gin to 1 ounce of lemonade. Still good, a little more sour probably than I should have been tasting. But what it did remind me of was my early 20s, and every time you went out to a bar, people were ordering shots, and it was, what are these called? Lemon
drops.
Lemon drops.
Lemon drops, yeah. And that's what this reminded me of. So thanks for a nice kickback to the past, and yeah, it was tasty, delicious. So thanks for the cocktail tonight.
Glad you liked it.
All right. Hey, so what do you guys have on the table tonight? Adam, what have you been playing?
I want to talk about the recent games we played on Board Game Arena, Blood Rage and Gaia Project, kind of simultaneously. This was a tale of two cities of two sides of the same coin, if I have the cliche correct. So we had Blood Rage on the one hand. I don't think I've ever had a solid game of Blood Rage in my entire life. I don't think I've ever not come in last.
And you continued that today.
I love this game. I know that there's some strategy that Tim and Chris obviously grasped that I clearly do not. It's never been close in this game. But we played that game, and the final score is like Tim 1 billion, Chris 1 billion, Adam 3. It was just embarrassing. Like, I don't know how you guys do it, but I can't stop coming back to this game. It's so unique. It's so cool. That's Blood Rage. The other game we played, Gaia Project. Dry and planets and Euro-y and putting these combos together. No, whatever. This was amazing. I had this faction, the Gleans. I was gleaning everything this game, putting this together with that and this thing and this thing. This is one of Tim's favorites games. It feels so good to crush Tim at it. And that's what happened here. I had a nice game playing Gaia Project. Everything was working out well. And I pulled it off very nicely, if I may say. So just the contrast of those two games, the tension, watching you guys have this epic battle. Tim, you had like 23 power in one of these battles in Blood Rage. Just playing those two games and you're simultaneously the area control in one hand versus the slow Euro-y feel of the other. It was pretty neat playing these two games over the last 3-4 days.
Yeah, super fun. It's so funny because I love Gaia Project and I feel like I'm doing well every game, and yet Adam crushes me every single game of Gaia Project. Like, we probably played like, I don't know, 8 or 9 games in the last few weeks. And the first couple, yeah, I did well. I was beating him every time. And somehow he's always, by the time we get to the end game, he's got like 50 more points than I do before we even get to end game scoring. And I'm in awe of it. And yet here's the area control games, which are not my thing. The troops on a map things, which I always complain about. I don't like the randomness. I don't like the king making in it. And I just crushed it. The last 2 games of Blood Rage I've had such a blast with. I just felt like everything came together. I planned it out right. I was pulling off the combat cards that threw everybody else's combat cards away and gave me power. And it was so much fun. Both these games and playing them, like going back and forth. What a great day of just like, hey, I got a turn in Gaia Project. Yes. Oh, I just finished that. A turn in Blood Rage. Fantastic. So yeah. Gotta love Board Game Arena for giving us these constant moments these days.
Tim, I want to go back to something. This is just a little weird note from Blood Rage. If you're not familiar with the combat, there's a straight strength cards. I'm going to add 5 strength to my combat, and I'm going to smash you. There's these other combat cards that are more rock, scissors, papery. If you play them at the right time, it can wipe everybody else's card out, and you redo it. There's 3 or 4 of these in the deck. Tim was getting this right every single time. Like with a rock scissors, he would nail it every single time and just frustrate everybody's battle plans, wipe everybody out, gather some points when you shouldn't have, steal somebody's character from it. It was insane. Tim kept nailing it, and I thought that was just extravagant to watch. That was fun.
I'm pretty confident that was black magic. There is no other explanation.
It was crazy.
All right, well, let me talk about two games that have been on the table for me. And again, I'm going to do a comparison like I did last week because these games are pretty similar. The first one is I finally got a chance to play the classic Reiner Knizia game, Ra. And Ra is an auction game. That's kind of what it's known for, but I didn't know much more beyond that when I started playing it. So what this is essentially it's Sushi Go with an auction mechanism. I'm pretty sure that Sushi Go is inspired by Ra as far as the way that your endgame scoring and your sets and everything work. But basically what happens is this. Everybody starts the game with 3 bidding tokens, and they're all approximately the same, but they're different numbers. So like one person might have 2, 6, and 12, and the next person might have 3, 5, and 13. So everybody's got 3 tokens of similar values, but different numbers. And on your turn, all you're going to do is you're either going to pull a token out of a bag, or you're going to choose to start an auction. If you pull the token out of the bag, it's kind of a tile. So you'd put this tile in the central board, and that adds to the auction. So if you pull a tile out, it's now available for someone else to auction on in a future round. And then the next person goes and they either pull a tile or they say, I want to bid an auction on this. But some of the tiles that you pull out of the bag are actually going to force an auction. They're raw tiles. And so if you pull one of those, you have to start an auction. An auction works like this. The person that either called the auction or pulls the tile out of the bag, the next person in player order is going to place one of their tokens down. So it's one time around. The first person might say, okay, I'm going to bid 2. And it could be for 1 to like 8 tiles that you're bidding on. And the next person beyond that can say, well, I can beat 2, so I'm going to bid a 5. And then so on. The last person that is bidding is going to, if they bid the highest, they're going to win the auction. But if they choose not to, then the previous person that had the highest is going to win it. So it's pretty straightforward auction. But there's one very special mechanism here, and that is that aside from bidding for the tiles that are in the board, you're also going to bid for whatever the previous high bid token was in the last round, and then you're going to give up the token that you just bid. At the start of the game, the token that's out there is the 1 token. So the first person who's going to win is going to give up, let's say that they bid a 5, they're going to give up their 5 token and get the 1. When you bid, you turn over the token that you just took. So you have a maximum of 3 winning bids per round. And then the next round, you start with the tokens that you won from previous bids. So you have to be really careful about winning a big auction, but potentially getting a very low token to bid in the next round. So it's pretty clever. Why I compared it to Sushi Go is basically what you're bidding on is these tiles that have different functions, but they're kind of different set mechanisms, set collection mechanisms. For example, if you get one of these, I think they're called civilization tokens or culture, they're culture tokens. If you get one of these culture tokens, and there's 5 different ones, if you don't have one by the end of the round, you're going to get -5 points. But if you get a set of them, if you get more than 3, then you're going to be 5 points and so on. So the more you get, the better. But if you don't have any, you get none. So you have to watch out and make sure that you get a culture token in each round. Otherwise, you're going to lose points. And then there's like these monument tokens that you collect over the course of the game. You don't score them at the end of each round, but at the end of the game, depending on how many different monuments you have or numbers of a specific monument, then you're going to get more points. So there are these different mechanisms that you are trying to collect during the course of the game. My favorite one is that if you collect these Nile tokens, which are like farms that sit on the river, you can collect them, but they don't do anything for you unless you get a flood token, a flood tile. And so the Nile tokens are worth 1 point each, but they're only worth a point each at the end of a round if you've got a flood tile that round. So you could collect like 6 Nile tokens and then not get a flood tile because everybody else is bidding against you. You get no points for it. But the next round, you might have 7 or 8 Nile tiles. And if you manage to pull off a flood tile, you've got a huge boon.
So, Tim, I hear you talking about auction numbers and previous numbers. And, that sounds so boring to me. And then now are you talking about set collection? Is that what's happening? I thought that was like your least favorite thing in all games ever.
I think what I heard was something like set collection, Reiner Knizia, and then I started falling asleep.
What makes this game fun, Tim? Tell me why you are digging this game so much.
First of all, it's quick and it's light, and that's where set collection actually shines. If you don't follow us on, first of all, if you don't follow us on Twitter, you should be following us on Twitter because we have a lot of great conversations out there. We love interacting with our listeners and our friends out on Twitter. So follow us on Twitter at BG_hot takes. But I recently I had a little bit of a hot take, and I said on Twitter that I thought set collection was a boring motivation in a game. And I stand by that. There's a lot of games where they use set collection to drive you to try to, collect different types or the same type. And most of the time it's boring. A lot of people pushed back and said, hey, Sushi Go is a great example of set collection. And I agree. And the reason it works is because you have a variety of different types of sets you're trying to collect. And so that kind of drives you to grab different cards at different times. And Ra does the same thing brilliantly. It really motivates you to say, like, hey, this auction is really useful for me because if I don't get that one tile, I'm going to lose points this round. Or if I get that one tile, I'm going to have a big boon of points. And there's also tokens that you can pull that will actually hurt you. So sometimes an auction doesn't look good to somebody, but at a certain point, there's so many other tiles that counter off those bad ones that it's worthwhile. Or maybe you bid really low on it and then you get a big token for it. So many great decisions for an auction. I loved this game. By far my favorite Reiner Knizia game I've played. By far my favorite set collection game I've played. And by far my favorite auction game I've played. I can't wait to play it again. Unfortunately, it's out of print, so I'm hoping that it gets in print again. I know there was a 2017 or 18 updated version of it with some beautiful artwork that doesn't at all match the mechanisms because it looks like a Kemet, like big muscular gods, and it's just set collection. But I want that version, so if that comes back in print, I'm picking it up. Fantastic game. The reason I wanted to compare that to another game is because I got introduced to a new set collection auction game this last week, and that game is called Nidavellir. I think that's the name of it. Nidavellir. Is that the pronunciation? How would you guys pronounce it?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Okay, close enough. I heard about it before and it didn't sound interesting because it's set collection and it's auction. But this game is also really fun. Not quite as classic as Ra. I don't know how much staying power it has. But this is a little bit different in that basically what's going to happen every round is you have 5 bidding tokens at the beginning of the game. 0, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there are going to be 3 taverns that you're going to be putting gold tokens out there, one of these 5 tokens, to bid on one of the 3 characters that are in that tavern. And everybody bids. And then if you're the highest bid in that tavern, you get the first selection of, and they're all dwarfs for some reason. So you're going to collect a dwarf, and different dwarves of different colors score on different mechanisms. So like the green dwarfs, you just score for having the most of them. Red dwarfs all have a number on them. So you get a score for however many of those are worth. So, kind of similar. It's just different set collections. You want to pick up different guys for different reasons. There's 2 really interesting things that happen here, though. Number one is that when you bid your 0 token on a tavern, which means you're going to get the last choice there, then it lets you upgrade whichever 2 tokens you didn't bid. You turn those 2 in. Let's say you didn't bid the 3 or the 4. You then turn those into a 7 token, and you give up your 4 token. So you're going to be able to upgrade your tokens over the course of the game, which give you better bidding options. But also, at the end of the game, they're worth more points. Every token you have is worth the points on its value at the end of the game. So you've got a motivation to bid lower sometimes just to upgrade your tokens. And then the other cool thing about it is that when you get a set of each different color of dwarf, which there are 5 different ones, then you're going to get this special hero dwarf. And all of those have different powers that you can select from. And then you add those to your tableau, and they give you some extra ability, and they might trigger another set collection that gets you another hero. So it seems really boring. I really wasn't interested in playing this at all, but after a few plays of this, I'm really loving this game. It's really nice production. It's just really super fun, quick to play. So Chris, you've played this with me a few times recently. What did you think of Nidavellir?
It was a lot more fun than I had expected. The set collection aspect of it was pretty enjoyable. I like the little dopamine hit that comes with getting those hero cards. It's pretty exciting when you get that that row going across with the different colors, and then you get to add in that big impactful point card. And I think that's pretty cool. I'm kind of 50-50 on the increasing token aspect of the game, but I think that's fine. I mean, it obviously keeps it more interesting. It adds another element to what otherwise is a fairly simple game. And the art in this one is actually really cool. I'm not sure who the artist is, but it's actually pretty terrific art. The only problem I have with this game, production-wise, is the fact that there's not enough of it. We've had that complaint sometime with other games where you have this really nice art, but only a few pieces of it. Like this one, each color of dwarf is kind of a different, like an adventurer, a warrior, a miner, a blacksmith. And there's like 2 or 3 of each one, so you kind of keep seeing the same cards over and over again. And that's kind of a shame because I really enjoyed the art in this one, and it really makes the game, it adds an element to the game that I think is really fun. But overall, it's a very enjoyable game.
Yeah, I had noticed that about the art being duplicates. Adam, you've played this game before. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I have played this one before, and for me, it was kind of ho hum. There is this coin value kind of goes up during the game. Okay, that's kind of interesting, kind of neat. Is it that fun to me, or that exciting, or that gamey? I don't know. And then the same thing. It's just the set collection with some different kind of points, exponential or linear or combo for this other thing. So it didn't really stand out to me. I didn't dislike it, but I wasn't one that I was like, hey, I need to play that one again. And another quick note about Raw, it looks like there is a reprint upcoming with box art by Ian O'Toole, and it looks amazing.
I can't wait. I can't wait for a new edition. I will definitely be picking this up when it's in retail. Raw. Now, on Nidavellir, it's a pretty fun game. I've been enjoying going back to it, but there's also, I just heard a review on it, and there's an expansion called Thematic, which is supposed to add some really fun gamey elements to it. So that is on Board Game Arena as well. So I want to try the expansion the next time I play it as well and see if that adds to it. But I don't know. There's something about this game that's drawn me back to it. It's a simple, quick game that makes me want to keep going back to it. So liking it more than I expected, especially based on my recent commentary on set collection. And now I want to have a top 5 set collection games because I actually think there are some pretty great examples, but I also think there's some pretty bad examples and bad uses of it. All right, so those were my 2 set collection auction games this week. Chris, what's been on your table?
Last weekend, I started gaming with a new group of relatively new but very enthusiastic gamers, and they were interested in being introduced to something new. And I busted out Pan Am, which I haven't played in quite some time, and it reminded me of one of our first, I think that might have even been our proto episode, right? Yeah. Yep. So it's a game that I haven't probably played since shortly after that. And I was reminded of just what a fun game that is. And not only what a fun game it is, but what a great way it is to introduce people to hobby gaming. Because it's a game you can teach relatively quickly. For new folks, they'll hear that and they hear the rule set and say, wow, that sounds kind of complicated. But then almost immediately be able to slide right into it and start making some smart decisions. And the graphics of the game, the visual production, the art, the old school maps and everything. I mean, it is such a pleasure to play. It looks so nice. It's easily accessible. You can get it at Target. It's such a great game, and I won't go into any detail on the mechanisms of it because we did a whole episode on that. So if you're interested, go back and look or listen to our first episode ever, and he would hear us talk about it. It was a real pleasure to get that back out on the table, and I really enjoyed it, and everybody who played it that night had a lot of fun, and I think probably at least 2/3 of them actually went out and bought a copy of it afterwards, so I consider that a win.
That's awesome, Chris. That's a game that I always want to get to the table, but I haven't done it in such a long time. What a shame. What a great game. Pan Am. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would love to go back to Pan Am. I probably haven't played it since we reviewed it. Had a couple really great plays of it. I think it's a fun, very approachable game. Every time I see it on the shelf at Target for like $20, I keep being tempted to pick it up and then thinking I don't need another midweight worker placement game on my shelf. So I haven't, but it's a great game. I'd be happy to play it anytime. All right, cool. Well, that will wrap up this episode. I do have one thing I want to add. Every episode I mentioned that we'd love for you to follow us on Twitter. We'd love for you to follow us on social media. And if you enjoy this show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. But I haven't actually called out a couple people that have rated us on Apple Podcasts. So I'm going to just call them out on the show right now. And also mention that these are some, friends that are interacting with us on Twitter. Happy to have you as part of our community. The first review that was from December 13th. This is Brian Schindler. He's a regular person we interact with on Twitter all the time. He wrote on here, I listen to this podcast on Spotify, but it's so good I came here to rate it 5 stars. I've listened to every episode to date. They provide such a good breakdown of the games they discuss that afterwards I know if it's a game I would like or not. So thank you, Brian. Fun to have him part of our community. Next one was from August. This was Riled Nerd, which we all know is Riley Stock from the Board Game Community Show. He's been nice enough to have us all on his show at this point. He said, I really enjoy listening to the Hot Takers chat about board games and board game related topics. You can tell how close they all are and how much fun they have talking with each other. Makes you feel like you're part of the group. Beyond that, the info given helps me figure out if a lot of games are something I'd actually like to try or not. They do a great job giving balanced info. So thanks, Riley. Thanks, Brian, for leaving some reviews for us. If you leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts in the United States, where I will actually see it, I will read it on the show. I apologize if I've missed anybody in the past, because I kind of dropped off doing this for a little while. So if I missed you in the past, feel free to drop me a note on Twitter, drop me a private message, and remind me, and I'll read your review on the show. But anyone else, leave a review for us. We'll call you out. Really appreciate it. Join our community. Come hang out with us on Twitter and chat with us. Thanks for listening. Until next week, take care, everybody.
Have a good night, all.
Bye-bye.